On page 80, we're starting a new lesson. As you can see, our new lessons always start with a new major scale fingering in the second section. Page 60 was fingering type 1, page 70 was fingering type 1A, and on page 80, we're doing fingering type 2, the key of G. So far, we are in just the second position, and we learned the C scale, fingering type 1, F scale, fingering type 1A, and the G scale, fingering type 2 in the second position. I will play all the repeats on this first exercise with you. This is the first exercise, G major, on page 80. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fingering type 2, G major scale in second position. If you notice, the root of this scale is on the 6th string with your second finger. We can categorize these scales by not only the names of them, but where the roots are. C scale, fingering type 1 was 5th string, second finger. Fingering type 1A, F scale in second position, is 6th string with a finger stretch, first finger. And fingering type 2 is second finger, 6th string. G major scale, all the notes are in second position. It's a C major scale with an F sharp. So every time that we stretch for the F natural in the key of C, we don't have to do that now. F sharps are in the second position. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. F sharp, G. F sharp, G. Again, the way to practice this first exercise is to review and practice the first 2 lines. So you're looking at each note while you're playing it, and it's the G scale. Then the next line, you have the chromatics between D and E. You have G, A, B, C, D. Slide D sharp, E, F sharp, G. D, D sharp, E, F sharp, G, E flat or D sharp. To get the E flat, you're coming down, so you stretch with your fourth finger. Again, it's D, D sharp, E, E, E flat, D. And the last two measures, you should practice that on its own. D held for 2 beats while you play. D, then C with F sharp, right? E, and then the C and F sharp with the C an octave below. Then here's the eighth note study at the bottom of page 80 into the first 3 lines on page 81. So it's the exercise, eighth note study in the key of G. I will take repeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. You might have to practice the areas where you have all these chromatic approaches. In the first measure you have in the third measure, in the first measure of the second page on page 81, third measure of the first line on 81. First measure of the second line on 81. Third measure of that line. First measure of the last line on page 81 of this exercise. Third measure of that line. If you notice, we have the scale starting on the root, then the scale starting on the second degree, A, with the chromatic approach. B, the third of the fourth, C. The fifth, D. The sixth, E. The seventh, and the octave root. Practice that slowly at first and then get it steady. See if you can play it through first once very slowly, then speed it up and play it again a little faster and trying to keep it as clean. Then put the metronome down to a slower tempo and try and do it with the repeat and build up stamina that way. Every time you're playing this piece, make sure you're looking at the notes and relating to what the notes are. Remember, the more you're playing in this position, no matter what key, you're going to know the notes better and better. Next is the arpeggio study. The way I'm going to play it as I have in the past 2 arpeggio studies, is the first time I'm going to use the picking that is notated, and then with the repeat I'm going to use alternate picking. Also, just a reminder, when you have notes on different strings, consecutive notes on different strings played by the same finger, make sure you roll the finger. Here's the 4th finger playing D and G. It's not, it's, here are the notes E and C in the next measure. Notice I don't lift my finger up. D and G. Unfortunately, they're with the 4th finger, so it takes some effort to press on those so you get a good sound, but it will strengthen that 4th finger so that you can have more dexterity and more strength in that arpeggio study. 1, 2, 3. I know it takes a while for it to come out perfectly, but just keep on playing it. Practice some measures by themselves. Practice the G major arpeggio to the A minor, to the D7, to G major, to C, to G, D7. If you have to, play them as quarter notes. Just get it so that you are doing them smoothly and playing with legato. The next exercise, the dotted 8th 16th, I'm going to play this twice for you. The first time I'm going to play it as legitimate dotted 8th 16th notes. And then the second time I'm going to play it as swing 8th notes. So here's the dotted 8th and 16th study played twice. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice how much more relaxed it is. Again, make sure you roll that 4th finger. Then you roll in the second measure your first finger. Then your third finger in the third measure. And fourth finger in the fourth measure. And then you're using different fingers. In the third line, we start coming down. So it's your second finger that's flat. You don't have to flatten your finger there. No, there, no. Fourth line, first measure. Second measure. Third measure. Notice the difference in the rhythms and the jerkiness of the dotted 8/16 played legitimately, and the relaxedness of the triplet feel, the swing. I would play the swing, which is the triplet feel, when someone's playing rhythm guitar or a bass is playing in 4. Page 82, we have a waltz duet. It's called Waltz for Two Duet. It's in the key of C. If you notice, the top part has a pickup, so we start on the third beat. It'll be 1, 2, 3. So I'll do 2 measures when I count it off. I'll go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, then I'll come in. And then you'll come in also. So here's the first part. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. This piece has chords, so you should practice those chords, moving in and out of the first, second, and third position. You have this chord, F chord, then you go to the third position, and into the second position, back to the first position. Same chord, and then we just lift up our first finger, and then put our first finger in A flat. Notice that next to the last measure on the second line, we're playing this, and we're playing the D with our fourth finger, and flatten our first. And then we keep going with the same chords. This is the A section being played again as we continue on. Then the B section is an important section because we're switching to another position. of that we might have touched in one of the duets that we played in the previous lessons. We're going to go up to the third position, but this time we're going to be in that third position for about 6 to 8 measures. So in the third measure of the fourth line after the double bar, which is showing us that it's another section, we'll call it the B section. We have a rest, then we play C, D, then we're going to put our fourth finger on E and slide up to F while picking F. So it's like this: 1, 2, and 3, and 1. The G, we land on the G with our first finger. 1, 2, and 3, and 1. A with our third finger, B flat with our fourth finger, A, E with our third, G, D. So it goes again: 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Keep in that position. C would be our next note. C would be with our third finger. 1, 2. E flat with our second, fourth finger. F, G, A flat, F, G, F, E flat, D. This is where we switch. We go E flat, D, 2, 1. Then we go D flat, C, 2, 1. It's always good to plan out switching positions. And here we have 2 ways of switching positions. One going up. How you see how we stretch and play our fourth finger and slide it. Then we play still in third. Here we go: 2, 1, 2, 1. Back to the sign, which is the first full measure on the top of the page. Playing these chords, and we go all the way to where it says to coda, and we jump to page 83, the top C chord, and then we have these diamond notes. These diamond notes in the last measure. These are harmonics. If we were just to play the top note E, it would be 12th position, E, and to play harmonic, we just lightly touch our finger on the 12th fret, not pressing, but just touching it, and you get a bell-like sound. So it's really, practice this, it's really timing to get this just right. If you just keep it down, it's a little muffled. So doing all 3 notes would be like this. Really a bell-like sound. These are called natural harmonics. We have natural harmonics on the 12th fret, 7th fret, and 5th fret. But this is the 12th fret. How do we know what notes to play? We're playing the notes that are in diamonds. Those notes on the 12th fret. E, B, G. And it sounds an octave above what we're... So those last 2 measures of the piece on the top line is 1, 2, 3, jump. 1, 2, 3. Now it's your turn to play the top part. The bottom part, we are not coming in with a pickup. We're actually coming in the first full measure with C on the second beat. If you notice, the first 3 measures are important that we don't have anything sounding on the first beat. I will play part 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Make sure, again, that the first beats of the first three measures don't have any sound in them. Especially after the second measure where you're playing D and A, I would stop the note ringing with my left hand. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, then we have, this is all in first position, all in first position. Fourth finger, A flat, G. Make sure you use your fourth finger, A flat, G. Then again, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3, and 1. Big leap here, F to E, 1. Second position, G, G sharp, A, B, 1, 2, and 3. Now this is the part of a G minor 7 chord. You know this G minor 7 chord like this, it's then a C9 chord. And this is an F major 7. F minor 7. Just to tell you what the sound should be, but make sure you play the notes and have a rust stroke. B flat 7. Then this is really an E flat chord. The other hard thing about this, I really have to make sure I count and know where 1 is all the time, because we're accenting 2 many times. In the fourth measure of the second line, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I really have to count that. It's easier when you have both parts playing at the same time. But just playing that part by myself, I really have to make sure I know where 1 is. In the last 2 measures, you have this. So it's actually G, I would play with the third finger, A, open, C, fourth finger, E, open, C, 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3. Now it's your turn to play this part. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. On page 83, we're playing chord forms, new chord forms. Our new chord form of major 7. We know a major 7 with root on the 5th string. You know, C major 7. It's always good to know roots of chords on either the 5th or 6th string. That's a good beginning way of knowing that you know chords in different areas of the neck. And if I know one C chord, or C major 7, or C minor 7 with 6th string root, I'm way here. But if I know a C minor 7 here, 5th string root, that gives me 2 choices of different areas to play these chords. Anyway, this G major 7 or major 7 chord is 6-string root with first finger on G, third finger on F sharp, fourth finger B, second finger D. One way to learn this fingering is to play your good old B minor chord in second position. Lift up your first finger and just put it on the 6th string. I remember Bill Levitt showing me how he figured out a good way of reminding people how to get this chord. By knowing your minor chord, you can get a major 7 chord. So it's a physical resemblance. The other is a diminished chord. We already know a C7, or a dominant 7th chord, like this. To get a diminished 7th chord, we just take our second finger and place it right after that root, and just play. Again, any note in this one, C sharp, G, B flat, and E, can be the root. This could be E diminished, B flat diminished, G diminished, D flat diminished. If you look at the last 2 measures of exercise 1, you have a D7. To get F sharp diminished, all you need to do is put your second finger down and get the diminished, because here is our root with that F sharp. Then we have to jump back down to G. Let me play this exercise 1 for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. In the first line, we use 2 major 7s, G and C, and each one of them have a different root position. What I mean is each one of those chords have a root on a different string. The G major 7, the root is on the 6th string. The C major 7, the root is on the 5th string. If we didn't know this, G major 7 would root on the 6th string, we would have had to play it, and then the C major 7 would be here. So notice how we don't have to jump around. We can hear the chords better. In the second exercise, we have 3 new chords, actually based on this major chord. This is a G major chord. To play a major 6th chord, we take off our 4th finger and put it on the 2nd string. Now, we need not to have the 4th string ringing. How do we do that? We just lift up our 1st finger a little and get this. Or, I'm playing the 1st string, but if we were to play this chord, G6, with our 1st finger very flat, we would be playing this note F, and that would make it a G13. Okay, which one is this, 13 or major 6? That's the 13th chord. Here's the 6th. Notice we're not hearing that note. And you're right. The 13th of G7, or G13th chord, has a 7th in it. So we count up from the 7th, the 13th's an E. For the 6th to happen, we don't have the 7th ringing, and we're going to call this E a 6th. 13th and 6th are really the same notes as what you have below it. To get a 9th chord, instead of playing the 13th, we're going to just take our 4th finger and play it on the 1st string. This is a little harder to play. There we go. That's easier. G13th, G9th, G6th, G9th, G13. So here is exercise 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. As it says on the bottom of the page, you may substitute sixth chords and major 7 chords, and we sometimes call them major 6 chords, for major chords. And we can substitute dominant 9th or 9th and dominant 13th or 13th chords for dominant 7th chords. In other words, we can play a G6 or a G major 7 for G. And we can play G13 or G9 instead of G7. There are a number of factors that would have me make my choice between 9ths and 13ths or dominant, straight dominant 7 chords, but just remember these substitutions right now. So practice G6, G13th, G9. Now your turn to practice these chords smoothly and slowly. Page 84 and 85, you have another chance not to quote-unquote practice reading studies. Again, you just read these pages, continue on if you make a mistake. The top of the page, G major 1, it says, is in 4/4 time, and the bottom one is in 3/4 time. I will keep the same metronome marking for both. So here's the first one in G major, reading study. Remember, look at groups of notes after a while. You can see the motion, you can see whether they're skips or stepwise, and make sure if you have problems, at least get the first beat of every measure. G major, reading study 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the second reading study in 3. 1, 2, 3. Now you have 6 reading studies. You have 2 in the key of C, you have 2 in the key of F, and you have 2 in the key of G. So what I would suggest is you do Monday, one of the ones from the key of C. Play one of the ones on Tuesday on the key of F. Play one on Wednesday on the key of G. And then do the other 3 in the successive days. So you're always looking at notes, but you're not looking at the same notes. And also, you're not starting to memorize it and know what's coming up next. You're using your concentration and your vision to look at groups of notes and to keep on going when you make a mistake. Again, at the bottom of the page 85, it says, speed not coming, left hand accuracy not consistent. Play any scale very slowly. Watch your left hand. Force your fingers to remain poised over the fingerboard, always in readiness. Do not let them move too far away from the strings when not in use. Concentrate on this. This is something that I have to concentrate on a lot. I have small hands. My tendency is to lift my fingers. I was always reminded about this from Bill. So always have your hand in the right position and don't flap them all the way up and down. Try and keep them curved. Page 86, Blues in G. We're going to play this duet with all 8th notes straight. The new thing that happens in this exercise, or duet, is that we play notes with a muffled effect. Instead of playing, the muffled effect is produced by taking our right hand and laying it across the strings that you're playing so that it muffles the sound, exactly what it says. Almost like a simulated bass. I will play part 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, you cannot play the first part muffled effect without practicing it first without muffling. If you notice, when I played the first part, I both did all downstrokes, and then later on I did. That's your choice. Keep a steady tempo. Make sure they're all even. And when you get to the third measure on the second line, you know, we're playing. That's the first two measures of the second line. Now we're going to have to play. We're going to have to move our palm down a little bit more to get the third string muffled. Then also in this piece we have a first and second ending. Don't forget about that. What you do is you play the first ending the first time. You go back to where the repeat sign is, which is the third measure on the first line, and go all the way down, play the third line, and when we get to the fourth line, we're skipping to the second ending. Part 2. Remember, the first two measures, you're not playing anything. You have two full measures rested that you come in. Blues in G, Part 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, you should be counting and ready to play that small G chord that comes in the third measure of the piece. Actually, the first two measures are an introduction. The real blues form is 12 measures, and it starts where the double bar is and the repeat sign is. If you notice, it is 12 measures. This is a 12 measure blues. Again, you have the G. Make sure it's ringing. Then and so forth. On the third measure of the third line, you have an accent over, it's really the top part of a D9 chord. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, you could also play rhythm guitar on this. Here's the rhythm guitar part. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you notice, the second time I played the form, I played instead of D7, I played D9. Remember we said we could substitute ninth chords for dominant seventh chords. The other thing is that you don't have to play that exact rhythm. You can, however you want to play it right now. Just get the chords in tempo and switch them in time. Fool around with it. It's a lot of fun to play the blues. 1, 2, 3, 4. Chord A2-3. As Bill says at the bottom of the page, when moving from chord to chord, the best fingering is usually the one that involves the least movement in the left hand. Leaving one finger free for possible melodic additions is also an important factor. These are diatonic triads. C, D minor, E minor, F, G, F, G, F, C. It's actually just a good exercise to play these chords over and over again. Make sure you have rest stroke whenever you're playing chords that have the top note on any other than the first string. In the first two measures, and then you come back you're playing these diatonic chords. In the second line, in the second measure, after the first ending, you have this. In those four measures, and as it continues, you not only have a chord, but you have melodic additions. That's why we're keeping that first finger and fourth finger free. You have to flatten your second finger to get the C sharp D. Then you're back to this E minor. So the most important notes are the top notes. That's your melody. So have that come out strong. Here you go. Now you have. Right. This is hard for me. That's the one of one section, end of one section. The first section, the first 8 measures, which are 4 measures repeated, and then going to the second ending, are statements of your triads. Then you have melodic embellishment over the triads. And then on the 5th line, second measure, you have low chords, like arpeggios. Make sure everything rings out. Then you go back to the second measure of the second line. You know, that part. And then on the 4th line, next to the last measure, we're playing. And we jump to the coda. And low C. It's a big accomplishment to play this chord etude slowly, legato, with feeling, using dynamics. So take your time on it, and you'll get stronger, and you'll know what's happening next in each chord, so you can plan out your fingering. The only way to play this is to figure out what is the best fingering for you and to plan. It's not a sight reading. Page 88, the top of the page. Let's look at these symbols. We've been looking at these symbols for a little while, so you should know by now that this top line with 2 lines on the side, downstroke, the V going up is an upstroke, and the release and pressure of is a comma at the end of a chord. Like, here's our release. There's the release. Do, dot, do, dot, do, dot. We have the note with an X and a stem. That means that we're striking a group of strings and they're deadened. No tone to it, just a click, click. It's really for rhythm and feeling the sense of time. I mean, we could have a lot of fun by having duets of me playing low and high. So there is a pitch, but it's really undetermined. And then we have the accent sign, which means strike sharply, play with more force. So knowing these symbols, we can look at that measure where it has C minor and G7. We have 8th all eighth note attacks, and we have down, up, right? Downstroke, upstroke, and we have an accent on one, and a no tone sound where we strike the deadened strings with an upstroke on the end of 2 and the end of 4. So if I were just to play C minor, I won't change to the G7 yet. It would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. With the G7, it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and sounds much better than to have that those deadened strings. Really gives it the dee dee ditch, da da da. Now the next measure there, we have a dead sound on the end of 2, the end of 3, and the end of 4. One and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and... This rhythm is good for mostly any type of Latin beat where you have most Latin beats have even eighth notes and different accents. So this is a good one, as it says in the book, a basic Latin beat which will work with the cha-cha, the guin, samba, and others. It's a good one for if anyone says, let's just make this tune with a Latin feel, you can do even eighth notes. The next exercise we have is picking etude number 5. We do have some places where we slow down and some places where we come back to tempo. And usually I've been not using the metronome, but I will use the metronome for this. And what I will do is play with the time and slow down at the parts where I'm supposed to, and then when it's odd tempo, I'll go back to the same tempo that is that I started with. So here's picking etude number 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the D major scale. And the first thing to do is to practice the D major scale. Keep your fourth finger on A, but let's not just play it. Let's just play. That's the first line. So then we add the upstroke on A. The hardest part to keep in tempo is when we have more distance between our lowest note and our highest note. It's easy to go and keep that tempo, but let's say something like the third line where we have low G, we have to move our right hand faster to get the A on the top string. Play this at a steady tempo and try and keep everything legato. You're not going to be able to play it fast if you can't play it slowly. In the last measure, we have this. Make sure you get the D with your fourth finger on the third beat. The D chord. Our next page, page 89, is a duet in G. Here's the first part. One, two, three, four. What a beautiful melody. Watch out with your entrance at the beginning, in the first measure. You can't start with an upstroke like it's indicated, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or if you want, you can do a downstroke, 1 and 2 and, you can do down, down, up, down, down, or you can do all alternate. It's up to you now. It would be good to try either way. There's a rhythm, a syncopation in the third measure of the second line. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, when you're having problems with rhythms, split the measure in half. You have the first half of the measure is 1, 2, and 1, 2, and the next part you come right in on 3. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. The last 6 measures, let's look at that. From the third measure in the fourth line, we have a C that we're playing with our third finger. Keep that down and play this C, E flat, A. And then, in order to start getting our fingers more flexible, instead of playing this little G triad, like I would like to actually, to play it like this, our fingering is to have our second finger flat and our third finger playing the third string. This is to get this joint looser. So instead of just like this, we're doing this. And then we're doing 2, 2, 2 on 2, 2, 2 on our G minor chord. Now this is a little tricky. We're playing second measure on the last line, we're playing this. And then we're supposed to play, you need to prepare the E flat. that is played on the fourth beat by holding all four strings and then playing. So it goes like this: 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, F sharp, 2, 3, 4. Harmonics on the 7th fret, low G. It's your turn to play this beautiful melody. Part 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Some hard lines here on the lower strings. Let's start at the beginning. We're playing the note D open and B with our fourth finger. And then we have this line, squiggly line going right next to this chord. That means it's a broken chord and we can go, doesn't have to be, it can be slow, so we can hear some individual notes. Then we have this line in the third measure. 3, 4, 1. That's the third and fourth measure of the first line going into the first measure of the second line. This A, G, F sharp, F, D, B, A flat, that goes into the A. You might have to practice that line. That's an odd line to even hear. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Then that measure that we have, the eighth note, quarter note, eighth note. 1 and 2 and. And then we go 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2. Then we have this broken chord in A minor 7. Then we have this line. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Notice we have the E flat with our first finger in the first fret, so then we can reach with our fourth finger on the D. Then we have this C9 chord again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. Let's look at that last measure on the third line. You can use that picking with red strokes, so you can go 1 and 2. You see that? 1 and 2 and, instead of all up and down, 1 and. Second measure in the fourth line. You have the D with your fourth finger, going down to C sharp with your third. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. One and 2 and 3. Make sure you hold the G. Last two measures, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Your turn to practice this part. 1, 2, 3, 4. With the conclusion of page 89, we have just finished another lesson. Let's review the lesson. We started at page 80. Let me get there. With the G major scale, type 2 fingering of a major scale. Root is second finger on the sixth string. Then we did the eighth note study. We did the arpeggio study with both our rest strokes and our alternate picking. And then we did the dotted eighth and 16th, where we did the legitimate this. And then we did it relaxed with the swing eighth notes. We went on to our duet on page 82. We learned about how to play harmonic on page 83. We learned a G major 7 chord, major 7 with root on the 6th string, derived from this minor chord and just playing the 6th string. We also learned about a diminished chord, that if we know this dominant 7th chord, we can just put our second finger down on the 5th string and get a diminished chord. We learned that this fingering can be both a G13 and a G6. G13, if we let the first finger really flatten and play the 4th string, so we hear that, and a G6, if we round our finger, our index finger, so that we're playing, that's what we're hearing instead of. And going with this G13, we also learned a 9th chord by moving our 4th finger on the 1st string. We had reading studies on page 84 and 85. Muffled notes on page 86. A beautiful chord etude on page 87, chord etude number 3. A review of our cymbals with rhythm accompaniment so that we can play Latin. Our wonderful picking etude number 5. And then we had this beautiful duet called Short and Sweet. This lesson will take a while for you to practice, so don't forget, part of practicing this lesson is to review some other material, maybe in the first part of the book, anything from page 1 to page 60, and review your major scale forms, and maybe going over your chord etudes and any other picking etude you may like to work on.